you cursed to almost never encounter the ideal penis that you want?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very similar to women's height preferences, where, so the 6'2" analogy I think is very good. If you asked women, what's the ideal height of a boyfriend? Maybe they'd say 6'2", right? A lot of them would say somewhere between, as we discussed in the last episode, somewhere between, maybe 6'3" and 6'5" would come up a lot, but maybe it would be 6'2". But then you ask them, have you ever dated a guy that tall? And most of them will say, no, never, right? It's the same thing with penis size. Now, these are ideal mate preferences, and ideal mate preferences can be a little silly, right? Like what's your ideal mate preference for a woman's salary, right? It could be as rich as possible that doesn't occasion security concerns, right? But then in actual practice, you might not mind if it was even, $20,000 a year, as long as everything else was lined up. So this is an ideal preference. And so ideally, most women probably would like to date a guy who's taller than 6'2", who's, 6.3 inches. But because it's an ideal preference, they're likely flexible as to their minimum preference, which was not collected in this study. One insight, though, they did ask a very good behavioral outcome question. I really like behavioral outcomes as opposed to just statements, right, as to like hypotheticals. They said, have you ever broken up with a man over his size? I think that's a very good question because that's where it's like behavioral deal breaker. Yeah. And they said, at least partially over his size. So there was no wiggle room in the question for, there was a list of 5 things and I'll just focus on the most socially appropriate one. It's like, was it an influence as to why you broke up? And about 27% said they had. So most women don't break up over this. Most women, this doesn't appear as a deal breaker. But about a third have had the experience of saying, you know what, I'm going to call it quits. The size is not working for me. Yeah, the size was one of the contributing factors. And I'm willing to say that to a researcher as well, right? Which is probably an underestimate. And in most cases of that 27% subset, the vast majority of cases, it was because the guy was too small. There were some women who said that part of the contributing factor was too big, but it wasn't common.
A couple of things come to mind.